Hi, everyone. Today here with us is Bрэdli Tasк, American businessman, venture capitalist, philanthropist, writer, as well as former deputy governor of Illinois and first political advisor for Uber. You were with the company from the point when it was just a small startup to the point where it is now.
Yeah.
So our topic is digital society, and let's just talk about the phenomenon of digital businesses in general. So they're literally creating new economic niches right now. And currently we have autonomous vehicles, we have traditional services like insurance that run on AI. So you've been known as the person who sees the next big things. So what are they now?
That's a great question. Let me tell you some things that at least we're investing in that I think are interesting. Some of them I think are global trends. Some of them are more US-based trends. So one would be digital health, telemedicine, and the ability to bring health care to people online in a far more efficient way. We have investments in pharmaceutical approaches to it, mental health, physical health, addiction recovery, lots of different components. So that's one that we're really excited about. That's number one. Number two, in the US, we have this incredibly aging population, and there needs to be all kinds of goods, products, services. It sounds a little like not cutting edge talk about, senior citizens, but the truth is there's going to be a huge industry that has to be developed around them. So senior care is something that we have been looking at pretty closely. Third would be, I'm really interested in esports betting. So I do a lot of work kind of in the gaming sector. And I think that esports betting has the potential to swallow all casino gambling, all other gambling completely. Because like I think about my son who's 11. He is very happy to watch two people he doesn't know play each other in a game that he likes. And he doesn't really know much about gambling right now, thank God. But when he's 18, he will. And do I think that he'll want to, start putting 50 cents down on whether the guy turns left or right, or a dollar on whether they, it's a pass or a run in the next play? I think so. So to us, we've been really looking at platforms where we can develop and grow. I'm working on a tele-religion startup right now that I'm incubating. We're looking to have the beta out there early Q2. So I think that could be really interesting and exciting. And then there's still so much more to go in drones, in AI, in machine learning, in cryptocurrency, in blockchain. So that, we've scratched the surface on a lot of interesting technologies and industries, but there's so much more we can do.
So what are the new business models and new markets that would be emerging in the post-pandemic world?
Yeah, so one would be, people have gotten used to getting goods and services in a virtual way. So that's whether it's healthcare delivered online or whether it is, all of your entertainment, to the point where you have to question, do movie theaters really need to come back, right? Or has everyone gotten so used to Netflix that quite frankly, the future is purely streaming and purely at home. Delivery drones, right? So if we're not going to be going out and about as much and ordering more stuff, would you want to have something that could autonomously bring you, whether it's your package, your burrito, or whatever it is? I think all of that is certainly one area. I think lots of things that are right now physical may not come back in the same way, even post-vaccine. So like take casinos. I mentioned esports a minute ago. I think that places like Las Vegas will always attract a crowd because it's fun to go there. But at least in the US, you have all these small casinos that have slot machines and some other kinds of gambling. People are going to say, you know what? I can do this from my couch, at home, on my phone, without driving anywhere, without getting in the car, without getting dressed. And that's what they're going to do. And so I think so many different forms of at-home entertainment, commerce, services that were already being developed will be so much more expedited because of changes in social norms and behavior because of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we should expect different forms of relationships between governments?
Yeah, it's a great question. Arguably, the more that government can provide services digitally, the less government you need, right? So I think you could look at it and say, rather than having all these hurdles of municipal government and county government and state government and federal government, if life becomes a lot less analog and a lot more digital, you can wipe a lot of that out. So, in the US, we waste tens of billions of dollars a year, maybe more, on just pure government bureaucracy that doesn't deliver any value to the taxpayers at all. And I think that transforming to a more digital world gives us the ability to eliminate a lot of that. Now, of course, all of the bureaucrats who have power and money are not going to go without a fight, right? They're going to want to keep what they have, so it's not going to happen overnight. But ultimately, there's just a lot of waste in the society that I think in some ways COVID starts to change the way we think about things.
Okay, so let's imagine Belarus as a tech startup. There is enormously talented human capital, but that's pretty much all we have. If you would have an opportunity to build a digital society from scratch in a country like Belarus, what would you do?
So it's an interesting question. There's two different ways to approach it, right? So without making this too complicated, the first way would be digital citizenship, which would be similar to what Estonia has done very well. And that's a question of giving every person in Belarus the opportunity, giving them, first of all, access to the internet, the technology they need, the broadband they need, and then linking their identification and all the services they need from government to the blockchain, where they can very easily, with their fingerprint or whatever it is, get whatever they need. That's one answer. The other answer would be, what would it take to spur a lot of venture capital investment in a place like Belarus? Because you're right, the talent is there, and that's sort of the hardest thing, actually, right? So the really smart people who are really good engineers, you have that, and that's far and away the toughest thing to do. So the next thing would be, how do you create an environment that makes venture capitalists like me want to invest in Belarus startups? So that would be things like tax treatment, regulations that make sense, government programs that link venture capitalists, universities, and founders and entrepreneurs. All your education programs that are trained to sort of teach people not just how to code or program, but how to do it in a commercially minded way to create new startups and new businesses. So, a lot of the things in the ecosystem that we have in Silicon Valley and have in the US that make it easy for a good startup and a good startup founder to attract capital and at least have a chance. Most startups fail, as we know, but at least have a chance to be successful. I think if you can recreate some of that environment, and look, countries have done that. Israel, for example, didn't have it. They have it now. So there are places that certainly can do it. There's no reason that Belarus couldn't do it, but it would be really taking what's worked well in the US. And by the way, also taking the things now that aren't working well in the US, whether it's stupid immigration policies or regulations that hamstring. We should have autonomous cars and trucks in the US right now, but they're not where they should be, not because the technology isn't there, not because the engineers aren't doing their job, but because the government won't create the regulations around it. So arguably, if you're Belarus, you could say, okay, here are all the places where the US is falling down on the job, we'll move it forward faster. So that there's tremendous opportunity.
Thank you. And my last question, Belarus is trying to overcome a dictatorship regime right now. So from a technology standpoint, in your opinion, what would be the technologies that would help to return the power to the people?
So great. So mobile voting, obviously, if they were willing to conduct free and fair elections. Twitter. So in the US, we have tons of problems in the intersection of politics and social media. But if you look, for example, the Arab Spring, Twitter was an incredible instrument for democracy, right? Because look at Hong Kong. That's how they organized all the protests. If people can communicate with each other freely, then that information is incredibly powerful, right? So whether that's online media or social media, I mentioned earlier, tele-religion, the dictatorship may cut down on your ability to worship physically, but if you can do the same thing digitally, it's much harder for them to stop it. And so I think there's a lot of tools that can really enhance democracy and personal freedom. I also think, privacy tools are also really important, right? Because if you're in a dictatorship, maybe one way that they would try to stop you from exercising your rights or your abilities online is to be able to look at everything you're doing and spy on everything you're doing. And the more tools the technology has to protect your data, protect your identity, protect your information, the more that you can keep government from honing in on it, and the more that you can conduct yourself in a free way.
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.